Thank you for listening to the Third Watch News Update at the Moonlight Lounge. We discussed several topics. They're very interesting no matter where you stand on this issue, especially some of the topics we'll be covering in this post. Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that the proper time he may exalt you. 1 Peter 5, 6. I'm sorry if I can't say that. 5, 6. Okay, so when you make a choice to discuss these topics, you have to really sort this one out because there's the truth and then there's man's truth. And those are kind of the things that some of us kind of wrestle over, fall ourselves over. But I know that if you haven't followed the breaking news about the 6.6 earthquake in Turkey, that's where I want to start. But before that, I want to talk about local weather. The humidity has been incredible, so I decided to go ahead and look at the 3-day weather forecast here for the tri-state area here in Pittsburgh. And this is the weather map, and it's supposed to cool off, I believe, pretty sure the thing a couple days from now, in a day or two. But what I wanted to point out is the humidity and the excessive radiation. I'm going to go into something in a separate report about things that we can do to help get through this, and it is going to be important. So let's go to that major news story about the earthquake off the Turkish coast, triggering a Mediterranean tsunami. Beachfront hotels were damaged, holiday makers running for their lives, and hospital patients cower under desks for safety. And actually, wherever that earthquake hit, it actually, the tsunami, I think when they say Mediterranean, it was somewhere in that Greco region. And here are some of those images I found on YouTube, and I screenshotted that, and I just want to show you some of the damage. 6.6 is earthquake in that region. I don't know if it was a shallow earthquake. I just know that when we follow a story like this, and we've been watching those solar events, and I often talk about space weather, this is just a forecast of what's ahead, and they are going to start to increase because of the solar they say we're in a solar minimum, and every time I watch people that really follow it and know the technical language for it. But just to give you an overview of this type of damage, and you can see just by the way people are running. And again, I'll put this links and information below so that you can go ahead and follow this rest of this report. And a lot of topics we're going to touch on. I want to also state this before as we go into this about the theory of everything. That's a very fascinating topic, and DNA, man, and creation, because if you really unlock a lot of what's going on, and you think about humanity and life, and some of the things that people often overlook is just the details and the information. A lot of people, they get into these debates, but they really got to get to the point of that. So let's go to this news story, and this is another big story from LA Times. This story also states about the big event on August 21st. That would be the epic eclipse. I mean, this is big news. I mean, people are making, and we knew it was going to be a big story, but just hearing these articles reading these articles and hearing the stories of what is going to be, I mean, it's going to be incredible. Now, I was watching some of the W77's report, and that too explains exactly what we've been talking about, is that this is going to be a big story. This is a big, big deal. When you have an eclipse stretched from one part of the country all across down to Charleston, South Carolina, this is a big, big story. I also want to touch on some other topics here, but let me go into what I find very fascinating if you really dig away at the DNA and the harmonics, and why so many people suffer in pain. It's a lot of people know that there's such a thing as vibrations, and you know the song "Good Vibrations." Well, I think that's a lot. There's a lot there, and because there's a lot of other energy. Well, I would say we're on why your energy matters. Okay, let's start there. Because there's electrical circuits throughout our body. And I wanted to state this, why I'm telling this part of it, because I'm sure if you want to really dig away at the story about DNA, but what I found really interesting is that we're so connected to the internet that actually our body reacts without even really knowing it. But I was at the grocery store and there was all kinds of clicking sounds and you're going through the register and you make these beep, beep, beep sound. Actually, our bodies are so conditioned to technology that we actually, there's like an internal trigger system that we actually, if you don't hear that sound or the ambient sounds, or your body actually responds to it. And I found that really interesting because I was like, you know what, I never really thought of this. And it makes me wonder how much of this really points to what's going on in your physiological makeup. You know, there's a lot of things that are where our bodies respond to. We respond to stress differently. We respond to a lot of things. Okay, so let's talk about the big event, September 23rd, because after you hear about an event like August 21st, then you're looking to this other event, and that's also the constellation Virgo with a planetary alignment. As you can see from this is exactly where the sun is positioned in Taurus, right, as this is as of a couple days ago. And you can actually track this alignment where exactly the planetary alignments should be happening as we speak. I'm going to show you an image why I find this really significant. I was going to the store this morning and the sun looked unusually reddish hot, and I don't know if I picked it up on this image, but I'm going to hopefully zoom in so that you can see this. But this speaks to that planetary alignment and the forecast for space weather. Okay, so the images I'm going to show you is the area in which our studio is on Main Street. And I want to illustrate that if you want to continue to help sponsor or support us, please do so. The information will be below. Let's get to those images. This was actually where the sun was positioned, and it was so bright. It was orangish, whitish, red. I mean, it didn't even, look how white it is. It looks like it blended right into the photo, but you can see the glare, the reddish, almost like a reddish glare here by the tree, but it was such a hazy, whitish red. I have to tell you, this explains what's going on in this, where they talk about nanoparticles in the air. Look how pink those clouds are, and that's an indication that there's a lot of radiation in our, in this stratosphere. And why are we looking at that? Those pink clouds. Those pink clouds are very pretty, and you'll notice the sunsets are going to get more interesting as time goes on. But the pink indicates some things, and that's space debris. And after you start to watch this a while, you'll notice that when it starts to get pinkish like that and reddish, there's a lot of radiation in our atmosphere, and that explains some other things. So I'm going to illustrate why we're going to talk about this forecast, because this is where people can take better care of themselves. I would stock up on iodine and tablets and start getting in the habit of this. What I see here, and when I look at these images, like this is actually more of an animation, but that's just an example. When an asteroid or a predicted asteroid hits Earth, this is what a lot of people claim that could possibly happen. It's very possible. I'll get to why I'm going to illustrate this here in a moment. But when you see fire, and then now California, 5,000 flee from a fire in California, and other stories like this, how can you not pay attention, you know? And there are other factors involved, and a lot of people want to get it dig away and they want to debunk it, but no matter where you find yourself, this is just a real interesting line of stories. You don't hear news like this. So, you know, if you would have asked us 20, 30 years ago, we would ask, like, what would it be like to report news like this? How would you be able to report it? I really don't know that a lot of people follow it, and the ones that do, they understand the importance here. So I'm going to just say this, because as a protection, out of protection, bless those who curse you and do good to those who hate you. Because I know scripturally there are a lot of people who would troll people's pages and say some ugly things, but no matter where you stand on this, I mean, you can get into a philosophical debate, but I don't know how much time you have for a philosophical debate. That leads us to this topic about Revelation 17. Or I think this is Revelation. Yeah, Revelation 17, 15, 17. And there's stories of the dragon, and I think you can come away with a couple of things. There's a name for that asteroid, or they call it the Dragon Planet, and there's a lot of different names for it. Nonetheless, this is where we're at. This is it. This is everything is leading up to the return of the Lord, and it says, "Prepare yourself, all unto yourselves to prepare your heart, prepare the way of the Lord." I didn't say that correctly. I apologize. I better get my Bible up. But I just want to, I'm just saying this like off the cuff remarks. But really, what's going on in the church is if they're not paying attention or they don't know how to illustrate it, they weren't paying attention 4 years ago. I know that because I've talked to some pastors. They don't really dig away at Revelation. It's a very fascinating story. Now, some people have debunked the Apocrypha and some of the added chapters of the Bible. So like I said, you have to discern the times you live in. But we know this much. We need to be salt and light. And at a time when things seem to get darker, that's when the light shines brightest, okay? So here's the thing. These are the things you need to know. If you're armored daily and you walk out there and you are prepared, you don't have to be afraid of anything. See, the thing is that you have more insight and the knowledge than some people that don't, okay? And when the word is given to us, he gives it to us as a light, our path. And the Lord said this, and it's going to light your way through the darkest times, because if you are here and as long as you're right with Jesus and you know this, you're praying, you're diligently seeking the Lord. That's where you're at. This is what you want. You know that the Lord has called you for a time like such as this. So I know that all of us at this point, and as I want to go into something here about prophecy and dreams and visions, because that's scripture as well. But there are a lot of things to point to, and there's a lot of topics to cover. So what we were trying to illustrate in the previous part of this part 2 about dreams and visions. And if you've been able to document your dreams and visions, you'll know that a lot of us have been paying closer attention, and I haven't really had a chance to do a lot more, but I am doing my best to keep up. And one I want to share with you is dreams and visions, and one in which I haven't really been able to shake, and it reminds me why I follow these stories, because of my dreams. And if there's one thing that God can do, is he can speak to you in your dreams. That's really what's been going on. And when we're awakened by something, or there's something happening in your life, it will make you think twice about a lot of things if you're thinking it through and you're praying. But I had this dream, and it was 2011, and it was just before surgery. And in my dream, I was in this almost like a mountainside. It was the most greenish mountainside I could ever see. I mean, it's so green, and had like a brook, and water was trickling around. And I mean, it was just like the most beautiful, close to paradise as possible, heavenly, all that. And I know I was on the mountainside, and Jesus was in front of me, and I was looking over my left side, and I saw earth was on fire. So, and then above me or around me, there were children everywhere, scattered all through this mountainside, and they were all different ages. They were really young babies, and Jesus kind of he just stared at me. He didn't say anything, and I knew what he was saying. It was about the children. And I didn't really know much more after that. I just know I saw these babies crawling up his leg. He was holding them. They were all ages, but most of them were very little babies, like infants, newborns, etc. And when I was looking over and I saw earth was on fire, it was obvious to me we were already in heaven at this point. So, and I don't know, we were restored back to an age period of our life. And my eternal age at that point was 26. Or 24, I was like around that age. So meaning wherever I was in heaven, I was 24. And I'm thinking there's a couple ways to try to figure this one out. Like, I remember I was going through a difficult time at 24 years old, right after my injury, and I was praying a lot. So and I actually started walking and talking and back to normal shortly after that. Or it could mean, and there's a couple parts to it. What I saw is that there was an asteroid that had already hit Earth. We were already gone. I was already in heaven. And a friend of mine had a dream about me, and he had several dreams, and he was a Navy SEAL, and he kept hearing this horn blow, like trumpets, And he didn't know what it was, and I knew because I would study this topic, and I hurried around and I was looking for the video, and I sent it to him, and I said, "Is this what you heard?" And he said, "Yes, that's exactly what I heard." Well, during this period, a lot of people were posting videos about these war drums, these sounds that were coming from all over, and everybody was under this extreme, I don't know, there was just a lot of distress around this because they heard trumpet sounds and all kinds of noise. In fact, there was a couple pastors that got together and they strung some music together and it sounded like a heavenly choir. So this was really the big deal for a lot of us. We're like, okay, yeah, this is it. We're upon the season of the Lord's return. It's just a matter of when. And all through that, a lot of people were just making all kinds of remarks about us. I was like, okay, whatever, because I remember opening up the Bible, and I don't know anybody that knows me, but back when I was 19, 20, I was living with a roommate, and that's all I did is study, and she knew it, and everyone around me knew. I was just like, my nose was in the book. And you would have asked me in 1990 or in 89, 90, when I started finding my way through this, this all would have been happening, I would have said no. But and the Bible says there's a way unto man that seemeth right, and there's other scriptures in the Bible, like there's man's knowledge and then there's God's knowledge. So that's where I started, and that's where I'm ending. We're to discern the times we're in. We're supposed to discern. I believe this is like a forecast. That's why we have a third watch update. We look at local weather. I try to string a lot of it together, but there's a lot in the news pipeline. And that's why we put together as much kind of images, but just showing you illustrates the point that we're approaching the time of the end. So hopefully with more updates, I'll be able to post more in time. But right now, this is the forecast, space weather, and some other things ahead of us. Thank you for listening to the Third Watch Update.